life comes at you pretty fast. This Sonic Origins video review was originally going to be very different. However, an aunt that lives in town was in the middle of trying to sell her house, which included holding a bit of a perpetual yard sale for a few weeks while she got rid of some clutter in preparation. Unfortunately, being the only family member in town that lacked a real 9-to-5 job, it fell on me to help her move heavy furniture and help deal with customers. That's not necessarily a complaint, as I had some of my mom's stuff that I also needed to sell off. But it did mean that I spent weeks and weeks baking in the summer heat, and I live in the desert, and it was during an unprecedented heat wave. By the time I got home every evening, it meant that I had very little energy left to work on the video, and it really slowed things down. I managed to get about 75% of the way done on the original version of this video when Sega released a patch for Sonic Origins. Given that close to half of my video was talking about specific problems I'd encountered while playing, and the patch itself was pretty significant, it seemed like a better idea to just throw that whole video out and start over from scratch. I almost just canceled the review entirely, but after my previous Sonic Origins video, I figured we deserved some kind of closure on my thoughts about the finished game. Though, let me tell you, maybe I should have canceled it because I fought against writer's block really hard having to basically rewrite this entire script. If you're curious about the original version of this video from pre-patch, I got far enough along in production that I have a full-length voiceover track, which I will be posting up for Patreon donors to listen to. Consider it sort of a lost episode. So, now that the game has been patched, where does that leave us with Sonic Origins? Well, at the very least, I suppose I should probably formally introduce what it is. Sonic Origins is the latest in a long line of many different Sonic game collections that bundled the main 16-bit Sonic games into one package. Those games being Sonic the Hedgehog from 1991, Sonic 2 from 1992, Sonic CD from 1993, and Sonic 3 Knuckles from 1994. But Sonic Origins is different. Most other collections of these games use something called emulation, which attempts to simulate how these games played on their original hardware. If you've seen my previous Sonic Origins video, then you know all about emulation. Emulation can be a pretty good substitute to pulling out an old game console, but rarely is it perfect. Most Sonic collections were plagued with emulation problems related to inaccurate sound, input latency, or slowdown, just to name a few. Sonic Origins doesn't use emulation. Rather than simulate a Sega Genesis, all of these games have been rebuilt from the ground up in something called Retro Engine. It's a special coding framework focused on creating accurate, retro-style games with modern enhancements. As such, these Retro Engine versions of these Sonic games come with a number of new features that aren't easily possible with emulation. These include basic enhancements like 16:9 widescreen visuals, the total elimination of latency and slowdown, and higher quality sound. Or at least, higher quality in theory. More on that in a bit. Remaking these games in Retro Engine also allows for brand new modes and features as well. All games feature both classic and enhanced anniversary modes, as well as a boss rush and a brand new mirror mode, which tasks you with playing through every level in the game with the scrolling flipped. It also makes inserting new content very easy. Not only does Sonic 2 contain a rebuilt version of the long-lost Hidden Palace Zone level, but a brand new mission mode remixes elements from all 4 games, giving you a long list of simple challenges to complete in new but familiar scenarios. It's perfect for the Sonic fan that just can't get enough classic Sonic. And since you're working directly with raw source code, in theory it means greater standardization across all 4 games. Get to play as Knuckles in Sonic 3? Well, now you can also play as Knuckles in Sonic 2 and, for the first time, even Sonic 1, complete with all new areas designed around his abilities. Some games even get a special Knuckles and Tails mode, where Tails follows Knuckles instead. The drop dash from Sonic Mania has also been added as well, usable in any game's anniversary mode, and you can even use Sonic Mania's version of the airlift ability in any game with Tails. And there's even a brand new story mode, which ties all 4 games together into one long, continuous narrative, complete with new animated cutscenes. Sonic Origins had the potential to be the definitive way to play Sonic's legacy games, backed up by the fact that these remakes were created by some of the development team that eventually went on to do Sonic Mania later on down the line. That's because the retro engine itself was the co-creation of Christian Whitehead and Simon Tomley, aka Taxman and Stealth. The pair have become legends in the Sonic community, and it was their nearly 10-year-old remakes of Sonic CD, Sonic 1, and Sonic 2 that eventually gave us Sonic Mania in 2017. The problem was, a lot of these retro engine remakes were trapped on mobile phones. For years, fans begged Sega to release ports for console and PC, but their cries fell on deaf ears. Sega was more content to pump out cheaper, easier retro game compilations, using questionably emulated versions of the Genesis games. Sonic Origins was a chance to finally set things right. To not just re-release the Genesis Sonic games yet again, but to improve upon them. To create the ultimate collection of Sonic's history. But reality is a harsh mistress. Sonic has had many collections over the last 30 years. Most of them are pretty basic, but there was one that stood head and shoulders above all else. Sonic Jam for the Sega Saturn. It was part of what Sega was calling Project Sonic. You see, despite Sonic the Hedgehog's explosive success in America and Europe in the 1990s, his games were nowhere near as popular in Japan. With Project Sonic, Sega hoped to raise awareness in their home country, and they started by bundling all of the Genesis Sonic games into one package. But Sonic Jam contained more than just Sonic games. It was a whole museum of Sonic's legacy up to that point. You could discover cheat codes, view character profiles, and listen to music. But there were three features that really defined Sonic Jam. First was the 3D Sonic world, where we were offered our first glimpse of what a polygonal Sonic game might look and play like. Second of all was the History section, offering a rundown of every major event in the Sonic franchise from 1990 through 1996. What it lacked in depth, it more than made up for in scope. Everything from game releases to major marketing campaigns were mentioned, even including oddities like the naming of the Sonic Hedgehog genetic protein in 1993. Lastly was the Theater section, containing a wealth of rare and interesting Sonic-related video content. Almost all of these focused on content exclusive to Japan, and to an American like myself, this was a treasure trove. It showed me a side of Sonic I'd never seen before, opening my eyes to a different world. And the Sonic games were pretty good too. Since the Saturn wasn't powerful enough to emulate a Genesis, these were probably native ports, some of the few Sonic ever received. And just like with Sonic Origins and Retro Engine, this allowed them to add new modes like Easy Mode and add the Spin Dash to Sonic 1. The only downside is that since the Saturn could not replicate the FM synthesis found on the Genesis, all of the sounds and music had to be stored as digital recordings on the disc. And in order to make room for all the bonus content, the sounds had to be heavily compressed. As a result, the sound effects in each game sound a little weird. Weird might be the wrong term. It doesn't sound awful, it just sounds different, and as a kid, I actually thought it sounded kinda cool. None of the Sonic compilations to follow ever touched Sonic Jam in terms of depth and quality. All of them skimped on bonus features, or featured poor quality emulation, or both. Sonic Origins seemed like a chance to change that. For the first time in 25 years, we had a Sonic compilation that was going beyond the bare minimum, featuring enhancements created by the developers of Sonic Mania. So does Sonic Origins finally surpass Sonic Jam? Well, at the very least, it's not as cut and dry as simply saying yes or no. Hey everyone, I'm just taking a quick break here to thank all of my Patreon donors, since this is something that I see other YouTubers do, this kind of middle of the video sort of promotion segment, and I think it's pretty smart. Special thanks go out to Logan, Minka Cola, Rose, Keith, Teko Kami, Setsune, and Big Knife. These folks are some of my biggest supporters, and a lot of them have been here for many, many years, some of them since the beginning of the Patreon, even. And, you know, they're important to me. for that very reason. To be honest, I kind of expect to take a bath on this video in terms of earnings. Here it is already September, and Sonic Origins came out way back in June. So, in terms of striking while the iron is hot, things are pretty cold right now. That means that your support here, now more than ever, it really, really means a lot to me. If you're not donating to my Patreon and would like to, hit up patreon.com/blazehedgehog. Donors get early access to the Discord, previews of upcoming videos, and, sometimes extra secret bonus stuff, like earlier I mentioned the Lost episode, the version of this video that I couldn't finish, that I had to throw away and start over from scratch. Patreon donors will hear the completed audio track for that. All you have to do is, again, go to patreon.com/blazehedgehog. I think bonus content and early access is like $2 a month. It's really not that much money. If you'd rather avoid Patreon for whatever reason, you can scroll down into the video description and there will be links and things there for you to check out. And like I said, now more than ever, your support means a lot to me. And if you don't see your name in the list of Patreon donors I just read out, don't worry about it. There will be a full list of all Patreon donors at the end of the video. So again, if you don't see your name here, just sit tight, stay tuned, everything will be cool. But now, back to the video. Speaking in general terms, I would say that Sonic Origins is one of the best way to experience the classic Sonic games, but there are obviously caveats with that. The first and most obvious is the fact that while Taxman and Stealth developed the original Retro Engine remakes of Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and Sonic CD, they were not involved in porting them over to Sonic Origins. Sega hired a different internal development team to handle that, and signs point it to possibly being a division of Sega called Go Game, located in Singapore. For the most part, Sega does not credit porting teams anywhere in Sonic Origins, but Go Game is mentioned in the credits for Sonic CD. Whether that's a leftover from the mobile version of the game or something new just for Sonic Origins, I'm not sure, and it's even possible that different teams may have handled the other games. Generally, when a different development team handles porting duties like this, things tend to fall by the wayside. Priorities are different, budgets are smaller, and deadlines must be met, so not everything gets preserved in the conversion process. It happens to everything, from Super Mario 64 to Silent Hill, though obviously some games get it worse than others. It shouldn't have to be that way, but it is an unfortunate cost of doing business. In the case of Sonic Origins, it means that even though all 4 games include Sonic Mania's Drop Dash, only Sonic 3 has the version that works accurately. The Drop Dash, as it appears in Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and Sonic CD, is functional, but it's missing some little nuances. It doesn't have the proper animations, and it doesn't work quite right with the way the games handle rolling. You're supposed to be able to change directions mid-air as you charge the drop dash, but it's not always possible in the first 3 games, due to the way rolling can lock your controls. As such, jumping out of a roll into a drop dash doesn't work correctly. It also means that little things that were slowly broken in the old phone versions are still broken here. For example, at some point, how these games handle collision detection was changed just enough that this section in Metropolis Zone now damages the player. In the original Genesis game, you're supposed to just barely miss these spikes, but that's broken in Sonic Origins, because it's also been broken in the phone versions for years. And it means multiple problems with music, too. In the original Retro Engine versions of Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and Sonic CD, these games contained enhanced soundtracks. In the case of Sonic 1 and 2, both of these games contained remastered music, created by taking the raw notation and running them through a studio-quality FM synthesizer, making the songs sound cleaner and higher quality. Compare for yourself, but do note you may need a good pair of headphones to really tell the difference. It's still the exact same music, just smoother. When Sega ported these Retro Engine versions over to Sonic Origins, for whatever reason they removed this remastered music and replaced it with original console recordings. Something similar but different happened to the 2011 version of Sonic CD. Here, Taxman and Stealth restored long-lost loop point tracks in each song. Being an early disc-based game, Sonic CD faded its songs out before looping them, but the original plan was to play a short bridge track while the CD cycled back around to the beginning of the song. It was intended to enable seamless music looping, but was never implemented in the final game for technical reasons. The 2011 version restored these endlessly looping tracks, and just like with Sonic 1 and 2, Sega removed this enhanced music for Sonic Origins, restoring the original 1993 console recordings. For whatever reason, this version of Sonic CD also removes the handful of voice clips contained within the game. There weren't tons, but Amy Rose's giggle, her cry for help, and Sonic's voice clip for getting a 1-up have all been removed from the game. On the flip side, the vocals for the Japanese opening and ending songs have been restored after going missing in 2011 due to a licensing issue. And then there's Sonic 3. If there's one thing you've heard about Sonic Origins, it's that they changed the music for Sonic 3. Here's the deal. We may never get a clear answer from Sega about the true story behind Sonic 3's soundtrack, but by all accounts it sounds like somebody somewhere did not get paid for their work on the game. And depending on how you look at the situation, it almost seems as though this is a fact Sega has been intentionally covering up for decades. Like, did you know that Sega has never, not even once, released individual composer credits for Sonic 3? There is no verifiable record of who wrote which songs, even the songs that originated from within Sega themselves. Sonic fans have gone to great lengths to source these composer credits from interviews and other information over the years, but a large quantity of that soundtrack has remained a question mark for almost 30 years. It's pretty suspicious. Regardless of whatever happened with Sonic 3's soundtrack, the end result is that they had to change the music. And there will probably never be a world in which you can legally buy a new version of Sonic 3 with its original 1994 soundtrack ever again. Sega's actions have very likely burned bridges with the original composers, and no amount of YouTube comments or complaining on Twitter is going to bring the old music back. This is just Sonic 3's soundtrack now. End of story. This means that around 10 songs have been replaced with alternate compositions first heard in 1996's Sonic & Knuckles collection for the PC, and later rediscovered in a Sonic 3 prototype just a few years ago. The alternate songs are... I don't know. I've personally never liked them, but that's because I grew up hearing the 1994 soundtrack instead, and anything different is always going to sound a little weird to me. Especially the versions being used here, which don't seem to match any known version of this soundtrack currently out there. Though these are based on the 1996 minis, many songs are subtly different, and not in ways that could be considered an improvement. More than just changes to its soundtrack, Sonic 3 also has general strangeness with the way it sounds overall. Compared to the other 3 games in this collection, all of the music and sound effects are slightly muffled. Now there is sort of a precedent for this. Depending on which model of Genesis hardware you were playing on, sound would either be sharper or more muffled due to cost-cutting measures with later versions of the Yamaha sound chip. Clearly, the sound in Sonic 3 is just trying to mimic a different generation of hardware than the other games. It definitely catches you off guard at first, especially when switching between games, but I got used to it pretty quickly. Still, some more consistency with how the other games sound would be nice. Consistency is probably the biggest problem with Sonic Origins, really, and that's due to how these games were developed. Earlier I mentioned that internal teams at Sega ported the phone versions of Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and Sonic CD. For Sonic 3, a brand new remake was created from the ground up, with development led by Simon Tomley, aka Stealth, aka one of the co-authors of Retro Engine and a former developer of Sonic Mania. Whereas Sega spent time removing features like enhanced music and voices from the first 3 games, Stealth's team went hog wild adding new things to Sonic 3. New sound effects have been added to all kinds of little interactions, like bumping against the snail badniks in Launch Base Zone. And new animations are everywhere. For example, Supersonic now has a complete set of his own animations. Previously, Supersonic only had a handful of unique frames, and that often meant falling back on Sonic's normal animations, but recolored to be yellow like Supersonic. That's not the case anymore in Sonic Origins, as Supersonic now has animations for everything. New cutscenes were added too. If you play as Tails by himself, he gets his own unique intro where you watch him park the plane on the beaches of Angel Island. They even restored some of the bosses. Normally, Sonic 3 and Knuckles remove Sonic 3's Big Arms final boss for everyone except for Knuckles, but it's been put back at the end of Launch Base Zone in Sonic Origins. And this is only a small fraction of the dozens and dozens of tweaks and improvements made to Sonic 3. If you're interested, the cutting room floor has an article going through most of the differences, and it's absolutely massive. It's obvious that the Sonic 3 remake in Sonic Origins is the most ambitious part of this whole collection, something it kinda pays the price for given it doesn't feel fully cooked yet. And just to reiterate, Sonic Origins has been patched once already. I mean, otherwise this video would have been done weeks ago. But as of this writing, there are still lingering issues. Earlier I mentioned the sprite size problems in Metropolis Zone, but Sonic 3 also still has a lot of annoying little problems and things that don't feel quite right. Take Marble Garden Zone, for example. This falling debris effect is broken as it's only meant to fall for a couple of seconds and then stop. These spinning top objects also control way worse than they did in the original game, as they move way too fast now. Plus, the way the camera locks in place during this other earthquake section feels very awkward. Just needs a little more work. But then again, the Sonic 3 remake went through the trouble of redrawing all the competition mode levels in full resolution. In the original game, you only ever see them in these tiny little windows, but now they're full size. They didn't have to do that, but they did, and it's kind of awesome. So where does that put us in comparison to Sonic Jam? The thing is, both collections have their little issues that hold them back from being absolutely perfect. Not only does Sonic Jam have the sound compression issues outlined near the start of this video, but it also features new pockets of slowdown that weren't in the original Genesis games. It's the kind of thing that isn't a deal breaker, but it is there. Sonic Origins also features its own sound issues, but in a strange turn of events, it's due to the fact that the sound was made more accurate instead of less. It's a weird choice and kind of a bummer, but again, it's not exactly a deal breaker either. Origins also has way more modes. Between Anniversary Mode, Classic Mode, Mirror Mode, Mission Mode, and a Boss Rush, there's a lot more stuff to play around with compared to Sonic Jam's original Normal and Easy modes. Though again, there are those caveats, like the fact that Classic Mode in Sonic Origins is still the Retro Engine versions of these games, just cropped to 4x3. If Retro Engine changed the gameplay in a way that you didn't like, well, it'll still be there in Classic Mode. For me, I don't like that Retro Engine makes bosses invincible during their intro animations, but whether you're playing Anniversary Mode or Classic Mode, that's just how things are going to be. I don't know, I guess Taxman or Stealth just like making boss fights take longer. There's also the issue that Retro Engine is a little overzealous with detecting whether or not Sonic gets crushed, which again is present in both Anniversary Mode and Classic Mode. Sonic Jam may have more accurate gameplay, but it only really has difficulty options. Normal and original modes are almost identical save for a few minor tweaks between them, and while I would have liked to see easy mode carried over from Sonic Jam to Origins, losing it isn't a big deal either. As such, for my money, I'd say Sonic Origins wins out in the gameplay department. It has its problems, but so does Sonic Jam, and what Origins lacks in polish it makes up for in a larger amount of content, with all of its extra modes and added features. And hopefully a future patch will help address more of its lingering issues. But there's one area where Sonic Jam is the clear, obvious winner, and that is bonus content. Earlier I mentioned that Sonic Jam contained both a sizable history section and a wealth of rare video content. Everything from Japanese TV commercials to unreleased pitches for projects that never saw the light of day. Sonic Origins doesn't even come close to touching this. Though it has a museum section for videos, it houses only 3 things. An archive of Sonic Origins cutscenes, the complete collection of Sonic Mania Adventures shorts, and if you bought the deluxe edition, you also get clips of the 30th anniversary concert. Even though I appreciate what's here, it's still pitiful in comparison to Sonic Jam. Sonic Origins doesn't even have the Sonic CD pencil test, something that wasn't unlockable in both the original 1993 game and the 2011 remake. There just should have been a lot more here. I get that they would probably have to relicense TV commercials from the production companies that made them, but Sega also has free content on their own YouTube channel that could have been included here. The developer interviews, the Cooking with Eggman shorts, heck, even just reuse videos made for past Sonic collections. There are videos they made for things like Sonic Mega Collection that could have been inserted here. Anything would have been better than what comparatively feels like nothing. It's Future Blaze. I'm inserting this before the next segment coming up where I talk about the art gallery in the museum section. King of Bunnies in the Early Access Discord pointed out that I am technically wrong about something I'm about to say. I claim that in order to access the premium section of the art gallery, you must first own the Deluxe Edition DLC. This is apparently incorrect. As we all know, Sega put out that super confusing chart of all the different DLCs and special editions for Sonic Origins. I completely ignored that chart and picked up a discounted version of Sonic Origins Deluxe Edition from Fanatical, since that got me everything and it was basically the same price as the regular edition. When I streamed Sonic Origins on Twitch back in June, someone in my stream chat mentioned that the extra songs in the museum were exclusive to the Deluxe Edition, which I took to mean that all premium content was locked to the Deluxe Edition. And since I already owned the Deluxe Edition, I just never bothered to check before writing my script. I think it's safe if we all just blame Sega's stupid chart for this one. But just remember, in this next section, when I talk about the premium content as being something from the Deluxe Edition, that's incorrect. You get access to all artwork no matter which version you buy. Okay, back to the video. Something similar is true for the art gallery. For starters, unless you buy the Deluxe Edition, all you get is a few pieces of promotional art, a few digital instruction manuals, and a tiny handful of IDW comics covers. The real interesting stuff is hidden in the premium section included with the Deluxe Edition, but most of what's presented here is shown with very little context as to what we're looking at. Take, for example, these images of the Sonic family. Unless you're a Sonic the Hedgehog superfan, you're not going to know what these images are, and the descriptions don't tell you anything. These images are from the Shogakukan Sonic manga series. Basically, America had the Archie comics, Britain had the Fleetway comics, and Japan had this Shogakukan manga. In it, we follow the adventures of a young boy named Nicky who lives with his family in Hedgehog Town. When trouble arises, Nicky transforms into the superhero known as Sonic the Hedgehog, sort of like Clark Kent turning into Superman. The series ran for a number of years and often debuted characters before they appeared in the games themselves, such as Amy Rose and Charmy Bee. None of that is communicated in the Sonic Origins art gallery, and it really should be. It's especially disappointing when you consider that Sega has recently helped publish more than one collection of Sonic's history, between the Cook and Becker art book and Sega's own Sonic Encyclopedia. There are reams of historical documents that have probably been very recently organized and cataloged, but Then I suppose Sega would rather you spend the extra money on the books on top of the $40 for Sonic Origins. And speaking of other Sonic comics, there is absolutely nothing from those here. Despite Sonic Origins being a celebration of 90s Sonic history, there are massive swaths of that history that don't even get so much as a passing mention. Outside of the Shogakukan concept art and those handful of modern-era IDW comic covers, there is absolutely no acknowledgement that Sonic was anything other than a series of games. Other Sonic collections gave you galleries of comic book covers, free issues to read, and more. Origins could have at least included the free comic book day issues of the IDW comics at the bare minimum, but they apparently wouldn't even swing for that. I mean, even Sonic Jam at least mentioned the cartoons. At the very least, the music section contains a significant collection of Sonic music. Not just from the 4 included games, but from across the 1990s as a whole. You not only get the soundtracks from Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, and Sonic 3, but also music from Sonic Spinball, Sonic 3D Blast, and even most surprisingly, Knuckles Chaotix. That's a game Sega almost never references, and to date it's never been re-released on anything else besides the 32X. That's mostly because Chaotix is kind of a terrible game, but it has fantastic art direction and incredible music, and being able to listen to that music here is very welcome indeed. You can even build and save playlists of your favorite songs. But any way you slice it, Sonic Origins comes up lacking in the historical content department. Sonic Origins was something I found myself legitimately excited for, and though the final product didn't completely live up to my expectations, I still think I've enjoyed it for what it is. It's not something I would call definitive, but there's a lot of really cool ideas being attempted here, and a lot of things I've waited a long time for. Like, if you remember my Sonic Mania review, I mentioned that the game should save your progress at every checkpoint. It didn't do that because the old games didn't do that. Well, Sonic Origins does! Every time you load your progress, you start at the last checkpoint you touched. That's fantastic! This collection should be better, don't get me wrong, and hopefully it will keep getting better in the coming months. But Sega has, once again, dropped the ball with regards to a Sonic game. It's just, this time it's not quite the end of the world, it's just more of a minor disappointment. A lot of retro game collections are a minor disappointment. They are produced quickly, cheaply, and with limited scopes. They are often the equivalent of a $3 DVD in the Walmart bargain bin. What we need more of now are the Criterion collection of retro games. Games that immaculately remaster, portray, and preserve classic games. Some of them do exist, like the Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection by Digital Eclipse, but they're still pretty rare. Sonic Origins felt like it was going to be a cut above the rest. And in many ways, it still is. But there's no denying that Sega made some weird changes to this collection and did not do a good enough job preserving quality or consistency across games. Sega has once again found a way to mess up an obvious home run, and the only saving grace is that it's not as big of a disaster now as it used to be. And when Sega won't wholeheartedly respect Sonic's legacy like this, it really sends the wrong message about what they truly value. Some of the most passionate Sonic fans in this community poured their heart and souls into Sonic Origins, but that only goes so far when fighting against a corporation looking for a fast buck. And that's the end of the video, folks. This was a tricky one to write because it's really easy to sound overly negative about Sonic Origins. If you think I was too easy on the game, or this collection, or whatever you want to call it, then I literally have an entire story mode playthrough uploaded to my Stream Archives playlist, and I tried to keep true to what I was feeling while I played. I also didn't have any time to say this in the review, but I definitely get the vibe that Amy Rose was meant to have a bigger role in this. Now, everything about character selection in Sonic Origins is a little weird, but Amy is featured very prominently in a lot of the cutscenes and has a lot of other art all over this thing. It could just be that they wanted her included in the cast more, but it seems to me like she was meant to be a bigger deal than she was. Big shoutouts to my Patreon crew. Edboy, J-Rag, Keith S, Melkodriggs, Setsune, Sofox, This Dorky Guy, Fiesta, Jackson, L, Minka-Cola, The Partitioner, Big Knife, Anders, Blue Jay, Dick, Logan, Ryan L, Sabrina, Sam B, Talkie Pup, Teko Kami, Ashley, and Rose. Kinda did that like a Pokemon rap. That's what it feels like to me. Links to Patreon and everything else is in the video description, though there should be like a card or something appearing here at the end too. I should also point out that I eventually have plans to revamp the Patreon a little. It's been in the works for a couple of years now, and I just haven't bitten the bullet and done it because I want to be absolutely sure that I'm changing it to something that's gonna be worth it. Stay tuned for that at, some point, maybe. Until then, see you on the next one. Mode that isn't available in any of the other games, and you can't pickle and you can't pickle Knuckles. That's true.